Okay, good vach. For those who see this live, those who see it later recorded, Motzaei Shabbos Parshas Pinchas, Tav Shin Pei Vav. So, as we do every Motzaei Shabbos, thank you, Judith, for the inspiration. We do a story of a tzaddikim and the Baal Shem Tov. So, a few stories about connect. This week's parsha talks about Eretz Yisrael. Parshas Pinchas about the division of Eretz Yisrael and the daughters of Slavcha who ask for a portion of Eretz Yisrael. So we have a few interesting stories. We'll start with the story of the Baal Shem Tov. Story of the Baal Shem Tov goes as follows. This is an interesting story, but we're going to tell it anyways. There's a story that the Baal Shem Tov was once... Ariel in. Okay, so the story of the Baal Shem Tov was once traveling with his students, as he would. And the Baal Shem Tov came to a certain inn, a village, and in this village there was a wedding celebration for a young couple that was getting married, a separate celebration that they had a private for their family, and they celebrated, and the Baal Shem Tov and his crew and his chevra students, the Holy Baal Shem Tov, they were doing their thing, getting ready to continue on the way. And after the wedding and after the celebration, the next morning, of course, everyone's getting ready to go back to their continue on their different locations of travel. And so when they're standing there waiting for the wagons to come, the Baal Shem Tov was standing there with his student, and the bride and the groom, the chassan and kala, are standing there as well. And all of a sudden, a bird comes down, and the bird starts to chirp away and chirp and chirp and chirp. And the Baal Shem Tov turns to his students. And he says, do you know what this bird is saying? So they look at the Baal Shem Tov, and he says, the bird is saying, for these shall the land be divided. Le'ela techalek is aretz. That's the pasuk in this week's parsha talks about the division of the land. No one understands exactly what the Baal Shem Tov is referring to. What's the significance of the bird, and why would the bird be saying that verse to this couple? So as it so happened, the couple, Baruch Hashem, got married and very loving, and they had children and grandchildren, and they built a big family. At the end of this, of the husband's life, towards the end of his life, when he's getting older, this tremendous passion, desire to travel to Eretz Yisrael, Ariel's Fruitov, to travel to Eretz Yisrael, and telling the story of the Baal Shem Tov. And when he went to his wife to discuss his desire to go to Eretz Yisrael, his wife says, how could we leave? We have children and grandchildren here where we live in Europe, in the city. So how could we leave our children? I don't want to go to Israel. I want to be with my family. And they discussed it. After a long time, neither of them would yield to the other. So they went to the rabbi, they went to the Rav, and the Rav and the Bezdin listening to this situation, and they had no issues with each other. They loved each other, but the husband really wanted to go to Israel, and the wife really wanted to stay with her family. So the Rav said, listen, you can't force your wife to go to Israel. And they told the wife, you can't force your husband to stay. So what we could suggest is you get divorced, if that's what you want, or separate. If you're not going to get divorced, but at least, you could, each go their own way. And so that's what happened. And for some reason, the story got around. And the story made it to one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, who was at this setting when the bird was chirping after their marriage in front of the Baal Shem Tov. And he said, oh, now we understand what the Baal Shem Tov meant, La'ela techalek is ours, that this couple is going to be lechalik, they're going to be divided by Eretz Yisrael, meaning Eretz Yisrael, that one's going to want to go, one's not going to want to go. It's an interesting kind of borderline dark little story, but the point of it is that what we see from here is that something that could happen so many years later, of course, everything is pre-decided for whatever reason. And there's no surprises in life, put it that way. Here, another story that we've told, I think, this story before, but I never knew the full story. So I want to tell the story again. Because there's a whole second half to this story. We spoke in times past of the great hidden tzaddik, Reb Leib ben Sarah. Reb Leib ben Sarah was one of the most famous hidden tzaddikim that lived in the times of the Baal Shem Tov. We don't know who he is. The Rebbe suggested in a talk once that possibly Reb Leib ben Sarah was none other than the holy Shpala Zayda, which was an older colleague of the Alter Rebbe, and he was either he would go in and out of hiding because Rabbi Leib ben Saras was known to be all over the place. The Baal Shem, and so the Shbal Zayda was all over the place. And when I guess Rabbi Leib ben Saras was in hiding, he wasn't, or maybe even as a student of the Maggid, as a Shbal Zayda, only a few people knew him. I'm not sure. I'm not certain of how it worked, but there's definitely we know who the Shbal Zayda was. Till today we know who the descendants of the Shbal Zayda is. They make a meal every year. Descendants of the Shbal Zayda. And at the same time, Rabbi Leib ben Saras was a known hidden tzaddik. So here's this person who's a student of the Alter Rebbe. This is the story. We've told the story, but now we know a little bit more details of the story. So it's a little different than we told it last time. There was a student of the Alter Rebbe who was a young man, a fabulous student, and decided very strongly he wanted to move to Eretz Yisrael. And so he, as a chassid does, he went to the Alter Rebbe in Liozna, and he says, um, uh, um, that he knows that it's very difficult to go to Yisrael, and he doesn't know if he should go to Yisrael because there's a lot of reasons to go because of the Kedushas Aretz, but also it was very difficult to go to Yisrael those days. The living conditions were mamish difficult. So he discusses with the Alter Rebbe if he should go to Reb Shnei Zalman of Ladi, the author of the Tanya and the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, if he should go to Eretz Yisrael. So the Alter Rebbe is listening to all his sides of the discussion. And it says, I think for something like this, you must go to Reb Leib ben Sarah. Reb Leib Sarah is known. Reb Leib Sarah is again the hidden tzaddik who the Rebbe suggests is possibly the Shbal Zayda. And tell him everything and let him advise you what to do. So the chassid says, yes, Rabbi, that sounds fabulous, but no one knows who Leib Sarah is. He's in hiding. He's a hidden tzaddik. How am I going to find him? How would I know where to find him? So the chassid, so the Rebbe says like this, and how will I recognize him if I see him even? So the Alter Rebbe says, listen, go to a so and so inn and wait there, and eventually there's going to become a group of a chevra of traveling beggars by wagon, and they're going to make a huge commotion. The one that makes the largest commotion and is shouting and all that, that's Reb Leib Sarah, and go to speak to him and tell him that I sent you to him. So the chassid goes to the inn and he rents a room and he's there for a few days. It says here a few weeks even. He's staying and waiting for this group of beggars to pass through, these traveling beggars. And when he gets finally he sees a group coming in, and he's in his room and hears a commotion, he runs downstairs, and sure enough, this is the description the Alter Rebbe tells him of a group of beggars and arguing, and there's one who's arguing the loudest with the most foul language and foul cursing, and really fit the description of the Alter Rebbe that this would be none other than the hidden tzaddik Reb Leib Sarah. So he runs over to the tzaddik, to this beggar, and he grabs him and he says, I know who you are, you're Leib Sarah, and the Alter Rebbe sent me to you. I have such a pressing question. I must ask you. And he asked me to ask you. So Reb Leib Sarah says, okay, what is your question? He tells him, I want to go to Eretz Yisrael. And I have this, it's not so simple. I have reasons to go, reasons not to go. So the Reb Leib Sarah says like this, go, this is the part of the story that we didn't know from last time. He says, go to the city of Barditchev. And in Barditchev, there's a tailor who lives just outside the city. And there, get him to make you a coat. When he's going to make you the coat, after he finishes making the coat, he's going to have a final fitting. When he does the buttons, he's going to be humming a tune. When he hums that tune, ask him about going to Eretz Yisrael. So sure enough, he comes to Berditchev, the chassid, and he finds the tailor, and he orders a coat, and he gets it being made. And after whenever time, a week, or it's ready for it to be, it's completed and it's final fitting. He comes, and of course, as the Reb Leib Sarah says, the tailor starts to hum a tune, and as he's humming the tune, he says, "Tailor, tailor," he says, "Reb Leib Sarah sent me. I need to know, should I go to Eretz Yisrael?" And he tells him the whole story. So Reb Leib Sarah, so the tailor says, "Sure, go to Eretz Yisrael, but make sure to always wear this coat." And he was so happy. Then the next day he comes back and he wants to again meet this obviously hidden tzaddik was sent him by the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, who was sent him by Reb Leib Sarah. So he was like a double agent. And then he, of course, the tailor's nowhere to be found. And later thinking about it, they were in the tailor's shop, the tailor has, like as a custom, has helpers. And one of the helpers he remembered after thinking about it was none other than the great tzaddik, Menachem of Chernobyl, who was also a colleague of the Alter Rebbe, a student of the Maggid Mizrich. So these are the two stories that we're going to tell about Eretz Yisrael. There's another short story. It's a long story, but we're going to tell it short because it's Motzaei Shabbos, and we'll finish up the halachas on the laws of Tachanun in a second, in a minute. So there's a story. We know that when in the 1800s, different various groups of people made their way from Europe to Eretz Yisrael. One of the groups was the students of the Maggid Mizrich. They went with the Holy Rebbe, the Rebbe Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, who went with another few colleagues, and they're actually buried in the Holy Cemetery of Tveria, and Remendel Vitebsker, and also known as Remendel Haradoker. And so that was the Hasidic travel to Eretz Yisrael. The Alter Rebbe, even himself, initially was on that group to travel to Eretz Yisrael. We know how difficult it was, and when the Alter Rebbe would send money, the Kol Chabad till today was set up to help support the families that went to Eretz Yisrael from the Hasidim. From the other side, from the camp of the students of the Vilna Gaon, there also was a group known as the Prushim that made their way to Eretz Yisrael. There's many stories told, but this is a story told about a famous student of the Gaon of Vilna. His name is Rabbi Yisrael of Shklov, who went to Eretz Yisrael. And very difficult for him to go to Eretz Yisrael. But he went to Eretz Yisrael, he got the Gaon's blessing, and he had tremendous chibas haaretz, love for the land. He went to the city of Tzfas, and it was very, very difficult for them to find their footing, and for this group of the students of the Vilna Gaon to find their footing. It was very difficult. Times were difficult. The mixing of the different types of Jewish communities was difficult. It just was very difficult. And at some point, it came so that the Arabs of the north that were never friendly to the Jewish people, sometimes tolerated them more times than less, came in and stormed the city of Tzfas and caused a month-long pogrom, where they raped, murdered, burnt, mamish, and such destruction that it brought actually disease to the city. So Rabbi Yisrael Shklov lost most of his family in the plague. He made it to Yerushalayim, to the old city, to find refuge. He only had one daughter left, and even there, he himself got the plague, and he was scared his young daughter would die. And he made a promise to Hashem that if Hashem heals him from this, he's going to write a sefer about all the laws of Eretz Yisrael. And so, sure enough, he survived, and he wrote a sefer called, I believe, Pas Lechem. Pas Shulchan, which was about the different various laws of Eretz Yisrael. He fulfilled his vow, and he wrote the sefer. He went back to Tzfas. He set up a second family, but again, there was so much difficulties in Tzfas of the earthquake of 1827 and 1834 that Mamish again destroyed the whole Galil, and his manuscript went up in fire. But because he made a promise, he wrote it again. And in the opening part of the sefer, Pas HaShulchan, he writes about the tremendous chiba, the tremendous love and opportunity he had. I mean, here's a person who suffered; he lost everything almost in the move to Eretz Yisrael, but he looked at it as a tremendous opportunity to be able to live in Eretz Yisrael. And on himself, he wrote that he found later the sefer of his own that it writes. He wrote like this that this book was inspired by the holiness and the most amazing ear of Eretz Yisrael, which is like the ear of Gan Eden. So here we see a person, that went to Eretz Yisrael, and on a physical sense, it looked like, his life became extremely difficult in Eretz Yisrael. But he only saw everything from Eretz Yisrael in a positive perspective, in a blessing, an opportunity, and wrote the Sefer Pas HaShulchan on Eretz Yisrael. So these are three stories about the connection to Eretz Yisrael that we're telling this week. So now let's bring up the text and learn a little bit of the law. Okay, so let's share the page. Okay, we're holding in chapter, I think it's 22. Yeah, so it's holding in chapter 22, the laws of Tachanun, the laws that we say the confession or ask for forgiveness after the Shemona Esrei, after the silent prayer. So we're talking about different scenarios of when you do and do not say Tachanun. So now it says like this. Ein oimrim Tachanun, one does not say Tachanun, a minyan does not say Tachanun. Bebeis HaKnesses, when one is in the synagogue or the shul, sheyesh hamila, if there's a bris in the shul. Or Shabal habris oy hasandik, if the father of the child who's having a circumcision, or the sandik, the godfather, the one who's holding the baby during the circumcision, oy hamoyel, or the person who's doing the circumcision, the moyel, mispalim sham davin the minyan. So this is actually an interesting halacha, because there are scenarios where there's a bris in a shul, where the known from the bris is davening in the minyan. Just so they have a hall that they're going to do later in the shul in an hour, right? Or let's say there's a few minyanim going on, right? There's an earlier minyan. So here it's, and I've heard this is the halacha that people go by, that if you know for sure there's a minyan in the shul, there's a bris in the shul, even if it's going to be later, and even if there's no participants, so then if it's going to be in the shul that you're davening, you still don't say Tachanun. And or if someone who is going to be a sandik, a godfather, or the father of a child who's having a bris, or the moil himself. So if you ever daven with the moil, you don't say Tachanun. Even if the circumcision itself means the ceremony won't take place in the shul, it'll take place in someone's house or another place. And if they're going to the home where the bris is going to be, in the house of the child, before the bris, or if they do mincha middle of the meal, then also for mincha one would not say the Tachanun. But if you're going to only daven after the benching, not before the benching, but after the benching, the minyan is going to daven after the, so to say, the bris is completed, then you do say Tachanun. But the father of the baby, the sandik, the godfather or the moyel won't say, because for them it's a Yom Tov, meaning to say pretty much, if you're a moyel and you're in a city like Yerushalayim or New York, places where a moyel could be doing circumcisions daily, so then you very rarely will say Tachanun on Shachris or Mincha. Okay. The moyel, he says, Shfuna number 5, the moyel is the one who performs the circumcision. That's his name. He's known as the moyel. 6 is the circumcision. 7 is the benching after the grace after meals. And 8 is, he says that why don't he say Tachanun? And Tachanun is not said on festive days. But so since this is a private festive for the father of the child, and for the moyel and for the sandik, so therefore for them they don't say Tachanun throughout the day. Okay, so just to break it down, in the morning, if there's a bris in the shul, you don't say Tachanun. If you're davening together with the moyel or sandik or the Baal bris, meaning the father of the child, you don't say Tachanun. If there's davening mincha before the bris, you don't say Tachanun. If you're davening mincha during the bris, means before Brechat HaMazon, you don't say Tachanun. If they're going to bench first, according to the Kitzur, and then do mincha, so then the rest of the crowd would say Tachanun, as the father of the child, the sandik, the one who holds the baby during the circumcision, and the one who circumcises, they will not say Tachanun throughout the day because it's a private day of a holiday. Okay, that's just a breakdown. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch continues. Again, so by the Rebbe in Grand Heights, when I was a Bacher, it was very rarely we said Tachanun because there was always either a bris or a chasen. You also don't say in a shul that has a groom that will get married on that day. So here he says, Kol Shivas Miyam Mishter Shloi. Throughout the 7 days of his celebration, meaning of the Sheva Brachas, so that whole time we don't, the chasen exempts the minyan of davening, of saying Tachanun. Ima chasen hu bacher oikala psula. If the groom or the bride is the first time getting married, right? So if they're both the first time getting married, then all 7 days exempts them, because if you're a person who's been married before and the woman's been married before, so you don't have the full Sheva Brachas. Aval alman, someone who is an alman, a widower, or shenas almana, and he marries a widow. So both of them have been married before, or divorcee. But we're saying it more, I guess. Divorcee would be the same law. Ein loy rak shloisha yamim. Then you only have 3 days of celebration. V'ach kach oimrim. Then afterwards you say Tachanun. And he says, on the day of the marriage ceremony, Tachanun is said by Shachris, prayers, but at Mincha preceding the ceremony, it's not said. Let's see the footnotes on this. So he says a bacher is a never previously married, a pesula, which literally means a virgin, is to mean also she's never been married. 11 is footnote, the Tachanun is omitted for the 3 days if they were both married before, a widow and a widower. Again, the same thing would seemingly apply to a divorcee and a divorcee. He says like this, others disagree and maintain that Tachanun is omitted at Chakras as well as Mincha of the day of the wedding. That's the Ilchus Ketano says, and I think that's the meaning by us, that specifically if the chassan is going, the day the chassan is going to get married, we don't say Tachanun. I don't believe many people say Tachanun if the chassan is there, if the chassan will get married that afternoon. 13, if the groom is present at the start of the prayers and left before the congregation reached Tachanun, nevertheless Tachanun is omitted. So this is an interesting footnote, that if, let's say, that sometimes, the chassan's in a rush and the minyan's taking a while, so the chassan, let's say, davens quickly, and he leaves before the minyan has a chance to say or not say Tachanun, to omit it or not. It's not, he's there, he's gone. Right after Shemoneh Esrei, he bounces, he leaves, right? So what's the law then? So in 13 he says, so you still omit Tachanun as long as he prayed with the minyan up until that point. Okay, now we're talking about other days that we do not say Tachanun throughout the year. We don't say Tachanun, not on Rosh Chodesh, I mean the new month. V'lo b'chamisha asar b'av, coming up soon, the 15th of Av. V'lo b'chamisha asar b'Shvat, not on the 15th of Shvat, which is known as Tu B'Shvat, Rosh Hashanah li'ilanot, right? This is the New Year for trees. Not throughout Chanukah, not on Purim, Gadol, Beis Yomim, so also the Purim Gadol, meaning if it's the leap year. So 2 days, 14th and 15th, because 15th is Shushan Purim, 14th is regular Purim, and not in Purim Katan if it is a leap year in the first Adar, Beis Yomim, again, the 14th and the 15th. So the 14th and 15th of either one other or both others, you don't say Tachanun, whether you are living in a city that celebrates the 14th or the 15th. You don't say Tachanun on either day. Not on the 33rd of the Omer, which is the yortzeit of Rashbi, and also to stop the death of the students of Rabbi Akiva. V'lo b'chol chodesh Nisan, the whole Nisan, he says, from Rosh Chodesh until the end of Nisan, it's a month that has full of holidays and reasons not to say Tachanun, so we kind of carry it over through the entire month. V'lo b'tisha b'av also, though it's a day of mourning, it's also a day we don't say Tachanun. V'lo b'yamim shebein Yom Kippur l'Sukkos, the 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot are not days of Tachanun. V'lo Rosh Chodesh Sivan ad la'achar Isru Chag d'Shvuos. So here he says, we don't say from Rosh Chodesh Sivan until after Isru Chag of Shvuos. Chavbad's meaning is we don't say Tachanun until the 12th, including the 12th. V'lo Isru Chag the Sukkos, we don't say, so we don't say Tachanun 4 days before Sukkot, we don't say on Sukkot, obviously, and not on the day following Sukkot. V'chol elu ein oimrim v'mincha shelifneim, and also we don't say the mincha before. Now, he doesn't mention over here Pesach Sheni, and Erev Pesach Sheni we do say Tachanun. Al be'erev Rosh Hashanah be'erev Yom Kippur, oimrim v'mincha shelifneim. The day before means mincha before Rosh Hashanah, mincha before Yom Kippur. We do say Tachanun. By us, we say Erev Yom Kippur. We say Tachanun in the sounds from Esrei. Be'erev Rosh Hashanah oimrim gam slichas rak acher kach rak la'acher kach ein oimrim. Sorry. Erev Rosh Hashanah, we don't say Tachanun. But Erev Rosh Hashanah means the Mincha. Before Erev Rosh Hashanah, we say Tachanun, of course, Mincha as well. Erev Rosh Hashanah, Gam Slichas, we say Slichas, but afterwards we don't say Tachanun in the morning prayer. Okay. So again, this is according to the Kitzur. Everyone should check their minhag when they say or don't say Tachanun. Chabad has a few days that are not mentioned on this list. Okay, so he says the 15th of Av. Okay, we'll see if we have to read all these footnotes. 15th of Av, he's telling us what the 15th of Av is. At one time observed as a festival for the numerous wonderful events of this day. What happened? On this day, God's decree that 600,000 of those that came into the wilderness shall die before the Jews entered Eretz Yisrael ended. So the 15th of Av, those who may say Midbar ended too, the day that it became permissible for the Jewish women to marry into other tribes of Israel. That was a celebration, so they can marry each other outside of each other's tribes. Also, it was the day that the tribe of Binyamin was again permitted to intermarry because they were after the story of Pelegish Begiva, after that horrible story of the Pelegish, of the woman that was murdered in the tribe of Binyamin, and all the tribes went to war with Binyamin. They kind of they were outcast of the other tribes, and then they broke that. They made peace, obviously, with the other tribes of Israel after being ostracated for a period of time, which is the story of Pelegish Begiva. Yerom, the king, had posted soldiers for many years, not allowing the Jewish pilgrims to Yerushalayim for the 3 festivals. Hoshea, king of Israel, opened the roads of Yerushalayim on the 15th of Av. So that's again a day of celebration. 4, when the second temple was completed, the land was totally desolated, so much so that no wood could be found for the burning of the altar. Many Jews jeopardized their lives and disobeyed the authorities and brought wood for the altar. The day when cutting the wood was completed was 15th of Av. So it's the Chag for the 8 Simosa for the wood for the temple. Okay. Footnote number 15. 15th of Shvat is the New Year of fruits. In other words, what's the definition of the new year? Is a question of Shemitah, of tithings. When do we count? When's it considered? What year is it counted? What type of tithings do we have to do? Okay, that's why he's saying the significance of the 15th. Purim, in other words, Purim and Shushan Purim. When there's a leap year in the Hebrew calendar and an extra month, the other one is added, then the greater Purim is celebrated in 14th and 15th Adar, and the minor Purim is Adar 1. Okay, these are kind of basic stuff. 18, the 33rd of the Omer, he says that's the day when the plague finished for Rabbi Akiva. Also, we celebrate the yahrzeit of Rashbi, the entire month of Nisan, Exodus and Pesach. Tisha B'Av is the day of the destruction of both temples, which will become a joyous holiday when Mashiach comes. Therefore, we don't say Tachanun. 21 is Shavuos, the days of preparation for and receiving the Torah Mount Sinai. Again, Chabad, we don't say Tachanun until the end of Yimei HaMiluim, which is after 12 days, 7 days of Shavuos. Even though Shavuos is 1 day, but we have 7 days till we could bring our obligatory sacrifices. The day following Sukkot, the day following festival, is still somewhat of a festival called Isru Chag. 23 is, in other words, at Shachris of Rosh Hashanah, we don't say Tachanun, but we do say Slichos before. Okay. Now let's go. We have 2 more laws in this chapter. Let's just finish them. This was a question, Rebecca. You're going to be watching this video later. You said you couldn't come tonight, so you asked this question last week. You can join tonight. So this is a question about the Mondays and Thursdays. On Mondays and Thursdays, we say a special extra Tachanun because the Fishahem Yimei Ratzin, they're days of desire or favorable days. Ki ba'arbayim yoim shakabas luchis shniyos ala Moshe Rabbeinu b'yom hey v'yard b'yom beis. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up the 3rd time to receive the 2nd tablets, he went up on a Thursday and came down on a Monday. L'chein marbim b'hem Tachanun, we say extra Tachanun, which we say the v'hu racham. V'oimrim koidim Tachanun v'hu racham, we say that v'hu racham in Chabad it's after the Tachanun. Others say it before the Tachanun. V'oimrim ma'aseh me'umad, we say it standing. V'tzarech la'omer b'kavani, you have to say it with great concentration. U'b'mesinus, and with deliberation, derech tachnunim, pleading. So there's, of course, if we're going to omit tachnun for whatever reason, based on the few laws we learned before of reasons why one would not say tachnun, we also omit the vehu rachum. Okay. The luchas, the tablets upon which the 10 Commandments were inscribed, came for the 2nd time. Moshe went up on a Thursday and came down on a Monday. Therefore, those are auspicious days. Of course, the days of Kriya, etc. And it was during these 40 days that Moshe begged and pleaded for forgiveness for the sin of the golden calf and received the salachti kitvarecha, that, like Rashi says, beratzon, that God really was able to forgive the Jewish people on the highest level. The custom nusach tzfard is to say tachnun before v'hurachim. Okay, that's our nusach as well. Chabad nusach hari is a nusach tzfard primarily, and therefore we say the tachnun first and then the v'hurachim. In Ashkenaz, evidently, first they say the v'hurachim and then the tachnun. Let's just finish the last law. La'achar tachnun, after one finishes the tachnun, oimer chatzi kaddish, we say the half kaddish. V'shen v'chamishi oimer el archapayim mu'umad. Then we say the el archapayim again, which is what we say. It's a small paragraph said before. A Thursday, Monday, before we do the Kriya, the reading of the Torah. We're going to get it back to the V'hu Racham on days that we were omitted when we get to chapter 25. Now we're just completing chapter 22. After the Tachanun is completing half Kaddish from Yiskadel until the Amiram Bi'alma V'imru Amen, and that's how we finish that half Kaddish. Okay, and 28 is on Mondays and Thursdays, Kel Erech Hapayim. We say the El Erech Hapayim, a short prayer said before the removing of the Sefer Torah from the ark, or bringing the Sefer Torah from the ark to the reading station. All right, Ariel, thank you for being my chavrusa tonight, and those who watch it later, and those who watched it on YouTube. Laila Tov.